Thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful and comprehensive introduction on India. Sometimes when I have never prepared before for any events and presentation, but for this time I have written something which I thought it's very important to address in such a forum, which specifically peoples are very much focused on trans narratives. So, during the pandemic, I have learned so many new experiences that I have never experienced before. I've seen how power, politics, and ability, elite especially, has played out in various forms in the name of providing support. Our population, on the other hand, like many other affected, is not prepared for this magnitude of emergency lockdown. Life came to a halt, and business stopped abruptly, and fear becomes a norm. There is a looming sense of fear, insecurity, and sense of doom, sense of doom. And because you are locked down in an environment which have never been very conducive for growth, and many doesn't have the skills, resources, and support to mitigate through this pandemic. Our community, transgender, has always been the marginalized section of population and have been struggling to thrive with a lot of difficulties with or without the COVID outbreak. With this outbreak, the community is further pushed back and is experiencing furthermore isolation. Social distancing have rendered many jobless, where the maximum work involved physical proximity. For example, beauty parlor in Manipur, mental upheaval in the form of increased anxiety, extreme sadness, the sense of loss, grieving, what used to be a normalcy is a common occurrence. This has not been addressed. The gap seems widened furthermore. The lockdown has also made me realize that trans people who are margined in terms of geography, cultural identity, food, tradition were pushed to compromise their realities to certain imposition and controls. Moreover, the distribution of trans resources fabricate conflict, the division of community by a few groups and NGOs. As the COVID-19 is attached with stigma, it amounts to social discrimination towards the trans community. I have a few points which I feel need to address. These are based on my experience. Number one, which I experienced a terrible phase of time during the COVID support was FCRA, Foreign Currency Regulation Act. The instance over FCRA has created enormous amount of challenges during the lockdown. The heavily documentation that was required for receiving support stood as a barrier to access the resources on time. Because in the Northeast, paper documentation was not practiced in our culture, and the community working at the grassroots level really finds difficult to accommodate in the new imposition. We struggled to find a shop that were fit to the eligibility of the FCRA guideline. The time that was consumed in the process of finding vendors that a proper shop registration bills received has delayed in getting the requirement of the dry ration for the community beneficiaries. And this is regarding the support that was provided by Minister of Social Justice and Empowerment. So that time we failed to find a good number of community members who have bank account. And also if the community have bank account, it's dormant because of not using for a long time. So there were financial support coming from various NGOs and also from Minister of Social Justice and Empowerment. However, out of 100 individuals, there were about 5 who have bank account. There were also community individuals who have bank account, but it were dormant because of not using the bank account for quite a long time. Besides, most of the support coming were for providing ration, but we found different requirements for different individual, which we failed to fulfill because of the lack of understanding towards the realities of the trans financial documentation tradition. So, and there was also favoritism, which I experienced from MSJE. there was, in short to say, they were gatekeepers, trans gatekeepers. This happens when the MSAE financial relief was released in the public domain. The people who were working with the ministry seems they had already engaged a few community individuals who have similar political affiliation with them. So the information was not in a wider dissemination during that time. The information was strictly given to few community members. Later on, like it was very difficult for the grassroots level community to access the information. So it was like if I asked to a person who is working as a consultant at the MSJE, then she will, instruct me to contact a person from Manipur, and this person was supposed to look after the entire Northeast. And that was the biggest joke of the millennium for me, because this person don't know the 10 list of community names from Manipur and how this person can work the entire Northeast. So these things were happening. And yeah, that was the thing. And also, when especially trans peoples, when we are in a crazy time, uh, there should be a wider dissemination of such particular information. And the ministry peoples did picked up those individuals who are ready to be their slabs. For instance, that notice, the example that I'd given, and the vulnerability of trans during the COVID opens the door for elite cis gay men. I would like to claim this as intellectual infringement, because like our experience, trans experience is our intellectual property. But actually we have certain inability to write our narratives. But there are peoples, elite cis gay men peoples who are very good in writing, who can articulate our ideas in English. So that fails us to access to a lot of resources. And not only resources, they get the recognition because they have exposed to the limelight, to the international and national forums, because they can articulate everything, because they are very much able to speak English. So language is also a big barrier for the trans community. For instance, like many of the trans sisters across the country, we've been working so hard, we have sacrificed our life for the past 20, 30, 50 years. Like, for example, we can take the name of Sabna Mosi and the one girl from, the one who stood for an election I have forgotten her name. And there are a lot of people around us who have dedicated and sacrificed their life for the welfare of the community, but they did not get recognized. And recognition is very important. Its recognition is giving power to the people. It encourages people to work further. So that recognition we don't get. We don't get those people who speak good English, those people who can write good English. They got the platform, they got the recognition, they got the acknowledgement, and we are, I don't know, it's very difficult. And so that was one thing which I found, because during the pandemic, I was the person who worked with the state for the implementation of a separate quarantine center for the transgender peoples. It was for the state level, but there was this gay man who, like, who had a close relationship with a local MLA. And then he was able to open a small room in the community quarantine center and given name as LGBT quarantine center. And oh my God, after 2 3 days, his name came out from the like a kind of recognition from the United Nations. Okay, the first LGBT quarantine center in the Northeast. So I was very jealous. Really, I was very jealous. Why should not I jealous? Because I have put down a lot of effort for my community. And then who are all LGBTI peoples? In Manipur, we have a few gay peoples, and they're very close to us. These people he's not close to us. And how can he took the name of the community, LGB, whatever the identity in the nomenclature, he can take, but actually leave T, because I'm there. We have few people, we have very limited resources, but we have few people who are very active for the community trans. So that was happening, and even that experienced me and also made me realize that even the UN methodology, there is a big gap. United Nations is very elite. They only recognize peoples who are in the higher position. So that was my experience, and that vulnerability. There was also an experience which I have encountered, like in terms of asking for season fees, ngari, ngari, and our indigenous community identity, because like ngari is a very essential, basic essential. In what to say recipe for the entire Manipuri community. We can live without oil, but we cannot live without ngari. So that was very important for us. So in that process, we have asked for season fees, uh, and however, a few NGO failed to accept our request to include ngari in the ration support in place of oil, and we were in a position that we cannot withdraw the support because that was a crazy time. The NGO said that they cannot support, and they made us real. That made me realize that people outside the state are really don't understand the basic food requirement of the community in the region. I feel like how the community living in the periphery are controlled and forced to certain cultural paradigms, especially during helpless situation. There was also an interview taken from me by an organization based in Delhi, and the objective of collecting that data was to look on the vulnerability of trans people who are associated with a particular socio and cultural identity, including caste. In spite of telling the interviewer about my indigenous identity and the struggle, I was taken under Bahujan identity. But I was not aware of Bahujan identity that time, so I did short reading about Bahujan identity, but I did not fit in there, so I requested them to remove me from the publication. So in the conversation, I realized that that person was genuinely unaware of the realities of the Northeast indigenous identity. That ignorance could possibly be the reason why many of our trans sisters across the country are still considering Nupi Manbi, Twai, and Ola having similar tradition with other trans cultural identity outside the region. So, like, however, Manipuri cannot be covered under Dalit and caste framework because in the Northeast, there is no social system that is rooted in four varnas, like the typical Hindu, and there is no caste essentialism. So, this is my late realization, which I many times I failed to address, but this time I prepared and then I studied a bit, so that allowed me to open up my eye and would able to articulate me to present the differences. And then the separate funds that's coming for trans men and trans women, it was very painful for me because like both trans men and women, according to my understanding, we have been working together for a common cause, for a common struggle, and during this vulnerable time, people have started dividing the community, fabricating conflict and gender politics using those resources, and it gives us a sense of division between the community, which I feel it's not a good attempt. It's really dividing the community and the solidarity that we are trying to construct and establish for a long, long time. It happens in Manipur, and I wish none of the NGOs and funder don't comes to the Northeast because it's a very tiny environment, and we don't want such bigger conflict to come in the picture and divide the community for 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs. We don't care. We really care about the community. We require money, but actually, if the money is going to divide the community, we don't want that money. We're happy in our tiny world. Yeah, that's the that was a short presentation, and then this for the state we have failed to I've failed trust to the state government, because during the pandemic also we did not receive any support from the government. The DC Imphal East was very close to me, and we had a personal, personal relationship. And then she had provided 40 ration kits in the entire lockdown, and all the support was my effort. And it was not my lone effort, but we have trans community in the beginning. When there was no support coming from outside, then we used to collect foods and monies, small amount of money, and then we identified very helpless peoples in the helpless condition, and then we used to give rice. We used to give only ngari and salt at that time, and that was the beginning of how we have started providing ration and then financial support. And then one thing which made me very disappointed was FCRA. This comes to my mind repeatedly, that FCRA stringent was very difficult for the peoples working in the grassroots, because like we don't have FCRA eligibility, and also we are not very much familiar with the financial documentation process. Okay, so in order to get the benefit, are we going to again go for another schoolings for financial education, which is not possible at all? So, and also we fail to find people who really willing to support us, who are trans affirmative. All people who supported us are just for, it's like give and take. They also have certain benefit, being close to us, being friends with us, and we also get benefit from them. So that was the entire thing which we have experienced during the pandemic. Yeah. um, let me just try to remember things which Mike possibly left out in during the presentation. Um, yeah, the Transnational Council. Yeah, that was, yeah. Oh my God, that's very important. That's very important. That's crazy. The center is crazy. Again, I will be taking up specially from the perspective of Northeast. Northeast is a very big reason. Not only Northeast, South India, Northwest. It is certain different state having diverse culture, language, everything. And then how a single person is going to represent the entire region? This is crazy. And those people, and honestly telling you, trans men cannot represent trans women cannot represent trans men. That's crazy. I cannot speak on behalf of trans men, because I have friends. I work with trans men. I'm the person who brought out trans men in the movement, and she knows that also. But actually, I cannot speak on behalf of them, because our issues is different. And the person who was appointed from the Northeast, I had already assured to the audience that she is a person who do not know the name of 10 individual. Then how can this person is going to represent the entire Northeast? So my question is this person going to really serve the entire community in the region? I think she might not have been traveling once outside the state, in one state of the Northeast. It could be me who have been traveling across the Northeast for all these years long. Since 2010, I have started working with the community from different state of Northeast. So that's the thing. And because he is a Brahman, we call Brahman as Brahman in Manipuri. So she is a Brahman. That could be the reason why he was appointed. So according to my reading, all Brahman, huh? Okay, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.